Hello and welcome to the Popcorn for Dinner podcast. It is the end of the season. The ashes have settled. Everybody's sad in the realm. Well, some people are happy. But even though it's next week, I'm pleased to announce that the Ravens did arrive as we are joined by Popcorn for Dinner producer Ebukana Namani. How you feeling, guys?
Yeah, my Raven actually hasn't arrived. I just happen to be here. That's why I'm here.
You were already here. We've been in we've been in this room mourning a certain strong boy, but but yeah, I think everybody else has a lot to think about. So, um, thank you for tuning into our season recap episode. We have a lot to get into. We have audience questions, we have general thoughts, and an overall look back of the season we just witnessed, prepared for you. So, I guess one of the first things we'll start with is, well, did we like this season? How did it do as a first season of a new show on Prestige TV in 2022? Any takers?
well, I obviously liked it, but it's hard to be like non-biased because I'm like obviously I was gonna like it anyways, unless it was as bad as like the last like two seasons of Game of Thrones. I think as a season, as a show that came out in 2022, I think it was a good show. Was it as good as shows like Severance? Probably not, but I think it was like a very good show
It
compared to
wasn't
like
as good as Severance in your mind?
I don't think so. I need time to sit on that because
To be
Severance is one of
fair,
the craziest things I've
so
watched recently.
I think, okay, I know we're not here to talk about Severance, but Severance was actually mind blowing. Like
Yeah,
I want to say that anybody who hasn't watched Severance, maybe give that a shot. Like if you're wondering, like, oh, like, is this the next thing Apple is going to do to take my money? Like, am I going to have to start paying for Apple TV Plus now? This is your answer. Like, if you're looking for an excuse to do it, like you closet wanted to pay for Apple TV Plus but didn't have a reason, your two reasons are Severance and Ted Lasso. Now go
yeah,
watch Severance and
yeah,
let us know what you think, because I don't know. I think it was an interesting season. I think the general idea, like, it's probably one of the most unique ideas for a TV show
yeah,
I've ever seen. And I don't even want to say what the idea is because I feel like that spoils the whole thing somehow. Like, I think everybody just needs to go in blind. But
yeah,
I don't know. I think House of the Dragon did its thing really, because in terms of thrill, I'd say it was maybe on the same level as Severance. Severance is a bit more of a slow burn. House of the Dragon has its moments here and there, but I think in terms of delivering what it promises to the audience, House of the Dragon did an amazing job.
yeah,
I think that's easily testifiable by all the people who are saying that they were converted. Like, I've seen a lot of people on the internet, in person, people in my own circles saying, like, I expected to hate this. I wanted to hate this. And now I don't hate this, so I hate me. What's going on? So yeah, I think it's been an interesting run so far. I think they've done a lot of things well, especially when it comes to setting the world up. So yeah, I will give it a pass. In terms of how it compares to Game of Thrones first season, I don't know. I'm inclined to think this is a better first season.
hmm.
Let's
That
not
may
do
be a
this,
hot take.
please. It's going to cause may no cause fights, please.
The because I think Game of Thrones season one was better. This was, I mean, you can tell that this show had more money than Game of Thrones, but
That's
I
the
think
thing.
that
Game of Thrones did really
yeah,
well for what they had. Um, it does. I mean, Game of Thrones did a good job of establishing the whole World of Ice and Fire thing. I mean,
yeah,
before that, the idea of a fantasy thing on TV was just going to be like a movie here and there. Nobody
mm,
was going to really follow it. Like, it was still looked down on. Now it's actually
yeah,
cool to like fantasy. Like, that really didn't exist before Game of Thrones.
yeah,
So I don't know. I think in terms of general storytelling and the ground that it covers, House of Dragon probably takes the cake. In terms of characters, in terms of characters, I'm gonna say that Game of Thrones may be better, just because we've we kind of had more time to understand what each person was thinking. I think maybe
yeah.
in House of the Dragon, things jumped around a little bit. I don't know. What do you
They
guys
did.
think?
Yeah, I agree with that point. It's like a lot of what happened in Game of Thrones in the first season probably happened in like a few months, but House of the Dragon was a few years, a lot of times with actors being recast. So you don't. I mean, you spend a lot of time with these characters, but like I felt like with Game of Thrones, you spent a lot more intimate time with them. It's kind of like how I talked about in the last episode, how Viserys' death was weirdly more impactful for me than Lucerys' death because I spent more time with Viserys. And a lot of people are comparing
Yeah,
Viserys' death to Ned Stark's death, but like I don't think they're the same. I think
it's not
Ned's
the
a
same
lot more
thing at all.
impactful.
It's not the
Yeah,
same thing at
so
all.
that's why those kind of things just make me feel like I felt more for Game of Thrones season one at least than House of the Dragon. But I do believe House of the Dragon is going to be better than Game of Thrones. Like I'm
I've
all
said from the
I
confident
think
of
beginning.
I think that's I think that's more spicy. But you guys have read the book, so I'll
that.
defer to you. But just Game of Thrones had season 3, 4, and 5. That's
Season five was Dorn. Season five was trash. There was only one good thing about season five, and that was Hard Home. Actually, no, there were a few good things, but like
okay.
season
Yeah,
five,
season 5 wasn't the best, but still, they had that
yeah,
middle stretch where
yeah, they
everyone was
did.
like, "This show is."
Yeah, to me, one, two, three are the crazy ones. Not even three, four, five. But we'll see. This is going to be a shorter. It's only 4 seasons, I think George said, so it's going to be not as long as Game of
Yeah.
Thrones.
And that says a lot, really, because, they've covered so much in season one. I mean, I've seen a
Yeah,
lot of people who are just a little bit concerned about that because they're saying, well, if they're rushing like this, they're just going to keep rushing. I'm I think it's fair to say that this show is, we can now say it freely that it's about the Dance of the Dragons. At this point, there's no, is there going to be a war? Is there not going to be a war? In the minds of both show watchers and book readers. Like everybody is on the same page that hell is going to reign, right?
yeah,
So that conflict, the Dance of the Dragons, there is enough content in there for like three, 4 seasons on its own, 3 or 4 seasons. In my
yeah,
mind, they were always going to do at least 3 or 4 seasons in total. And looking at the way season one has gone, we're probably going to get like 4. Even
yeah.
if George R. R. Martin didn't say that, I would have agreed on that front.
No, he's. Oh
And
yeah,
yeah, and the thing is, there's probably two sides to the whole time skip thing in terms of characters. Some people are saying, well, these characters, we're not getting enough time to spend with them, so we're not that impacted when things happen to them. See Lucerys Velaryon, see Harwin Strong, stuff like that. On some other level, it's kind of like this character was so good in this short amount of time that I wish I had more of them. Let me keep
yeah,
watching to see, what kind of other characters we might get from this. And I think that's kind of a good like nod to the show and what it's doing with the time skips. I think the fact that we're enjoying all that stuff is proof that the time skips are somewhat working. Yeah.
yeah. And also, like, because I went back and reread like chapters of the books, like they haven't taken anything out. Like they could have added more stuff to make like all the different like time periods we've seen seem more fleshed out. But when I was rereading the book, I realized that they just looked at the whole timeline of what happened and they just grouped it into time periods and they just made the show about that. They're not cutting stuff out by skipping. I think what they could have done was like they could have added stuff to make like one season about when Rhaenyra was a kid and the second season about when Rhaenyra was an adult, but like that wouldn't have made sense because they'd have been adding stuff, which was what Dan and David did in Game of Thrones that just fucked everything up. So I think the time skips it made sense and it was literally
Yeah.
devised to get
The
us to season two.
the
It's gonna
pacing
slow
really
down.
did make sense, yeah,
Yeah,
because it's going to slow down. The world is going to kind of expand a bit. I think it's going to be a bit more sprawling. Game of Thrones was always sprawling. It started out in many different places and then consolidated into like everybody in one place. Whereas
yeah,
this is sort of going to do the opposite in my mind. I think the pacing is good. I like to see this show as having three distinct, not even all that distinct. And I think that, first of all, because I think that's like that's kind of a good grade on their part. There are three sections to the show. There's pre time skip, like pre major time skip, the 10-year one. There's post major time skip, and then there post major time skip before Viserys' death, and then there's post major time skip after Viserys' death. Those three actually have different tones that make a lot of sense for the time period that we're talking about. And I think you're kind of graduating from one to the other without really thinking too much about the fact that that's happening. I think that's how effective the time skips are. Like it feels like an increase in tone and intensity that makes sense for the progression of time. I don't think
yeah.
it's jarring at all, and I think that makes a lot of sense for character development.
Hmm.
But with that in mind, what would you guys say is the most memorable episode?
Oh, Driftmark easily. Driftmark is my favorite episode. I think that
For people who don't have encyclopedic minds like Fammy, Driftmark is episode 7.
it's the one where Amon One Eye gets Vagar, loses his eye when Aegon was made a fool of, where Rhaenyra had the iconic line, "Now they see you as you are." It was the perfect
Chef's
balance
kiss.
of chaos and fucking wholesomeness and family and chaos and violence. Yeah, it was the
If
best
by
episode for me.
wholesomeness you mean child on child violence, then yes.
No, wholesomeness. I was like, people were, Lena was mourning his sister, and he got a chance to escape with his lover. That kind of stuff.
Yeah,
But yeah, that was my best episode. In fact, my initial when I first saw it, my gut reaction was that it was just the best like Game of Thrones House of the Dragon episode I've ever seen. But now my answer is no. It's up there, top three, top five, but not number one.
I'm kind of torn. It's either that one or episode 8.
Yeah,
Episode 8 was kind of amazing, to be honest. Just in terms of doing a lot with so little.
yeah,
This is Game of Thrones. Their budget is through the roof. Okay, like they didn't have like there's bottle episodes don't really exist in in this particular world of TV show creation. But if I was gonna say anything felt like what a bottle episode would be, it might be this one because it's just it's almost like a flex, like it's a dialogue flex. There's so much character work being done in episode 8. You get to really see Viserys clinch his spot as the emotional heart of the season, and
yeah,
you kind of are reminded what all of this is about. Like the way he's reminding everybody at that table what everything is about, like what really matters. I think we, the audience, are also being reminded of that, and that was very powerful. All the moments there were sincere. When Rhaenyra stands up to give that toast, I think sometimes people may be watching that and be thinking, "Oh my God, what's she about to do? Is she about to throw shade in the midst of all this?" But she sincerely just like apologizes. She thanks Alison for taking care of her dad. Alison says she'll be a great queen. Otto is confused by that and panicking, which is proof, So yeah, that's pretty
yeah.
amazing.
Episode 8 was a solid one too. I think those two are the stronger two episodes out of all of them.
Hmm.
It's and it's weird because I love the like you broke it down into how like there are different time periods in the whole whatever, and I would have thought that 9 and 10, because when I saw the episode titles would have been the stronger two, but it was 7 and 8. 7 was amazing, and then it would follow by like the time skip. To me, that's the most important one because we were seeing all the characters in their kind of like the final form for the dance. That was a good one for me. And Viserys, I think that was the best performance of the season. It was episode 8, Paddy's performance. Oh my god, that long take of him walking into the throne room to defend Rhaenyra's claim is a scene that I've watched numerous times. The only scene that I've watched more than that is when Viserys got eaten up by Vagar.
Eaten up. What a way to put it. God,
Yeah.
people are still healing.
It was an appetizer, man. Not even the main course. Just a little, a little hors d'oeuvre just to get started. What about you, Ebuka? Do you have a favorite episode?
I think I'm with you. I would say Driftmark by
Hmm.
far my favorite episode.
By far.
Yeah,
Okay.
because I like the way Ebube tried to describe 8 as a bottle episode. I never really thought about it like this, so I like that. But I would say about the finale, I personally expected more from the finale. But we'll
Oh,
get to
please.
that.
Ah,
The If anything, honestly, the episode I expected more from was episode 9. There's just the history of episode 9 as being bangers, and
that is fair.
there was no
I can't
banger.
even argue with you on that. Yeah.
I literally think this is the worst episode 9. It's not better than Ned losing his head. What happened in season 2? But it's not better than Battle of the
That
Blackwater. It's
was,
not better than the Red
yeah.
Wedding. What was season 4? It was Daenerys
Battle
doing
for
Four
Castle.
something.
was
This was Battle for Castle Black.
Oh, that no way!
yes.
Watches on the Wall. That was
Yeah.
beautiful. It's not better than Watches on the Wall. It's not better than what was season 5?
Season 5 was the
Hard
fighting
Home.
pit where Daenerys almost died.
Oh,
Hard Home was episode 8 of season 5. Episode 9 is the one where basically
Danny
the
flies.
Sons of the Harpy show up
Yeah,
and yeah, she
yeah.
flies on Drogon for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, I'll argue season episode Hard Home was better than episode 9 in my opinion. So I'll count.
Yes.
Yeah, but still, it's not better
And then
than that
season 6, that
that
was
one.
Battle
Battle of
of
the
the Bastards.
Bastards. Oh my god, I love that.
And then
Not
they
better than
stopped the
Battle of the
trend
Bastards.
in
And then the
season
show
7 and
ended
8.
in season
Yeah, the show
6. Can you?
ended
Yeah,
basically.
the show ended. Of the literally, that is so
We
apt. The
should
show ended.
honestly, that should have been the first red flag. And I felt weird about it when I saw the number of episodes in season 7 was going to be 7. My first thought was like, who greenlit this? Like, what is the problem here? Did we run out of money?
You know the
Nah.
honest truth. I was actually kind of happy when I saw that because I was like, these guys have a story that they're planning on telling, and they don't
Well, it
feel like
looks
they
like you
need
gave
10
them too much
episodes.
credit.
I did,
Okay,
man.
they had a
Damn, they
story
did.
that they didn't want to tell, and they tried to run away.
They wanted to go do Star Wars, and
God.
unfortunately, they didn't get to do Star Wars in the end. That's unfortunate. But yeah, I think it's the weakest out of all the episode 9s, by far, and I was very disappointed by that. But yeah, I guess
Okay,
Rainey's got her moments.
we're not in the question section of the podcast yet, but how do you guys build anticipation for things that you already know are coming or will happen? Like you, for example, you're saying you expected more from episode 9, but you
Yeah,
already know where the story is, and like
yeah.
you can kind of guess where they're going to end the season on. So do you
Yeah,
Well,
really, yeah, like how do you
that,
temper your expectations with what you know is coming?
that's
Like
a fair
eh,
question since we guessed correctly, actually, where they would end the season.
I mean, it's the interesting part for me is that obviously I know where the story is going, but it's so George has the way he describes his writing process is that he says that there are different type of writers. There are architects and there are gardeners. The architect plans everything out and starts writing, and the gardener just kind of has this idea and he nurses the idea and it grows into the story. And sometimes it changes. Sometimes characters go do things that you didn't even expect. I think that I view it kind of in the gardener's approach, where I know roughly what's going to happen, but there's certain nuances of things that happen I didn't see coming. Like whole episode 7 to me, I was like at the edge of my seat for the whole episode. Laenor surviving, I didn't know Laenor survived. I thought he died. Lucerys' death being an accident, that's not how it happened in my mind. And so there's a lot of like anticipation of you'd imagine certain things when you read it, and then it's just beautiful to watch someone else show you their interpretation and you can put the two together. Like for me, um Viserys in the book and Viserys in the show are two separate characters. My brain cannot put the two together because they're just very different characters. But Daemon is like the same person in both. So it's those kind of things. It's like it adds another layer of complexity and beauty to like appreciating the art form.
Yeah, the show really, I think, and I know I've said this before, but it's sort of like for me the word of law at this point because I think the show is informing the book and the book is informing the show. The book is kind of a rough sketch, right, of what happened, and it's written after the fact. Some people, who were there, but also some who probably weren't. And it's written maybe like 20, 30 years after everything went down. So these people are recalling from memory stuff that they may not even have been privy to. Conversations like the one Rhaenyra had with Daemon in front of that fireplace when they talk about the prophecy and he tries to strangle her. That's not something anybody who wrote those histories would have known. So the show is kind of telling us all the things that the book
are you saying none of them
did
survived
not.
the dance?
No, but everyone dies eventually. Now we've watched Game of Thrones.
Yeah,
Everybody's
like
dead. So
literally, like because the people who write the stuff, like 'cause some people are going to survive the dance. Don't get me wrong. Even some dragons will survive the dance of the dragons. Like most of the dragons are things that we can really account for. Like we can see where everybody is at the end of this whole conflict. But I think it's fair to say that many of the people writing the story would not have a kind of pro Rhaenyra agenda in mind. Like this like think about it, right? You have the High Septon who anointed Aegon. You have is it Grandmaster Orwell?
yeah.
You have like Mushroom who was in the court and was just there for vibes. Like these people are all green leaning, if not full on green supporting. You get what I'm saying? Like that's there's a reason in the
So
book
Mushroom was
Rhaenyra is
black. Mushroom was black.
right. Mushroom was kind of like the black because I think
Yeah.
just because he was there a lot, he probably
Yeah.
liked Rhaenyra and stuff. He made or he thought Aegon was kind of a waste man and stuff. So I think there's sort of an imbalance, and each of these sources is not as reliable, right? And the general tone of the book in a lot of the time tends to be green leaving, because like the one that's portrayed as the reliable of the unreliable sources is the Archmaester Gildane, who's writing everything, right? So I think there's a lot to be said for filling in the gaps, and the show is doing a good job of that. So because we have an idea of where things are going, it's easy for them to sort of surprise us when they show us how certain things actually went down. And we can trust them as canon because we know George R. R. Martin is involved. Like, they're not just making stuff up without his consent. Like, these writers are all sitting together and showing their understanding of how things really would have gone down in that world. It's possible that these are things George R. R. Martin always knew happened, but because he wanted to write a realistic portrayal of unreliable sources writing the story, he would have left those things out. And now the show is providing that. Like, one of my favorite ones is one you mentioned about Lena actually being alive. That actually makes so much sense. Like, him dying would have made sense too, but him getting a chance to leave is also something that's an interesting idea, and it doesn't change the outcome at all. Like, it's just something we can add to the canon and be like, okay, this adds some color to what's going on. Stuff that may happen with his dragon Sea Smoke now may be seen in a whole new light by both show and book readers.
Yeah.
So I think that's how the anticipation is built, because there's essentially and it's good because they've set this tone. Like, they've established that there is a surprise in store for everybody, no matter how much and that's nice. It makes the show continuously like engaging for everybody. That's the is it the prequel trap, right? Like Better Call Saul, which I'm basically an expert on at this point. It is a show that had to go through the same thing. We knew how Breaking Bad ended. We knew where Saul ended up. We had a very good idea of how things went down for most of the characters, but they were able to create a show that told us a new story involving new people. A lot of the time, what happens isn't as interesting as how it happens and why it happens. And I think that's what these prequels are doing a good job of showing us, which makes it engaging for everybody watching.
Yeah. That's very well said.
I try. Thank you.
Yeah.
Let me see. I think there's a lot to be said also in terms of the tone of the series, about their use of more archaic and classical language. I don't know if I'm the only one who noticed this, but there's some words that they say in the show that they never really said in Game of Thrones. I can't think of specific examples, but their English is a little bit more, I don't want to say Shakespearean, but it feels more classical. It
Yeah.
seems more formal, and it feels it feels less accessible to people who would be the masses. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And I think that's a reflection of the time period they're in Westeros, and that's a good way to show that this is the same world, but a different era.
Yeah.
The like the like everything is mirrored in the books, and them using these words is sort of a reflection of them, and by them I mean the writers. It's a reflection of they're taking words from the Maester, who would have been in a different social class from everybody else. And Maesters are supposedly unbiased, but we know they have some type of agenda. I don't have proof, but soon the Maesters' agenda will come to light, and there'll be evidence, and I'll be vindicated. But today is not that day. But yeah, I think it's very subtle and effective. One other thing I liked or at least one thing I've enjoyed seeing over the course of the season, is how people react to these Targaryen names, and the fact that so many of them sound alike. I used to laugh at this actually when I first started looking into this world, because Daenerys' name is very unique in Game of Thrones. Like, it's really, really unique. Nobody's name really sounds like hers except maybe her brother. And when I first started reading up on the Targaryens, I saw that so many of these naming conventions are so set in. And at first, it's like very funny. Like, we break the fourth wall and think this is really funny. But then when you think how there's an in-world explanation of this, because obviously they have a language, and that language would inform the way some of those names are said. And clearly, everybody wanted their child to be the promised child because there's so many people named Aegon.
Hmm.
And I think actually there may be up to 11 of them or so. We get six if we that are supposedly like in the direct royal line, people who could be princes, but and five of them were kings. But I think it's sort of interesting the way they do all that. Like you see names like Amond,
Yeah.
Vaymond, Damon.
Yeah, it's a lot of
And
A's. Even Emma
it's
is like
interesting.
AEMMA. I think it's very much influenced by like old English, like in the what 10th, ninth to like 12th century.
Yeah,
Or if you
when
ever
they were
watch
having
like
issues with the
the Lost
Vikings.
Kingdom, all those kind of stuff.
Yeah,
There were a lot of like
literally.
Estelstead, Ethelstan, all those kind of names.
Yeah,
I think it's
and
influenced by a lot of that.
literally some of those names become more modern. Like something like you said Ethelfeld and Ethelstan and names like that, right? Something like Edward was actually there, but now Edward is a
Yeah,
very common name that's
yeah,
spelt with just an E and not an A,
yeah.
right? And actually, speaking of the Last Kingdom, there a few of the actors from that show are actually in this
Yes,
show,
Aemon
and they're
One
doing a
Eye.
fantastic job.
Yeah, I
Aemond
was shocked.
and Helena.
Who- Who's
Helena is
Helena?
Ethelfled.
No.
Like her
I need to
daughter.
Google this. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know. I'm seeing it now.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's there. Yeah, it's just like a big reunion. I would actually hope we see more people from that show because honestly, The Last Kingdom is fantastic. If you like Game of Thrones, but you also like true stories and like you like Vikings, that show is for you. It's
You know
really
one
good.
thing that's stopped me from watching The Last Kingdom. I loved
What?
Vikings, like the
Uh huh. The History
yeah
Channel show Vikings.
History
I've
Channel
seen
one. I
that too.
love
It's
that one.
really good.
But one thing that discourages me from watching The Last Kingdom is that I know the Vikings don't win, and it pisses me off. Like it just annoys me that these guys don't win. It pained me a lot with Vikings, and I just pushed through it.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I loved watching the Vikings. I sided with them, but
Yes.
I'm in disagreement. Those people were ridiculous. Okay, they couldn't plan well. Their plans were always bad, and they had no strategy other
But they
than
had
rape
the
and
love of the
pillage.
game. They had the love of the game.
What game, fam? These people could have destroyed the English. Can you imagine them not being able to destroy the English? It's because of the Vikings that we have colonization. Okay, because they couldn't stop the English. Like, what is going
Good
on?
point.
You guys could have destroyed these people. Like, you were taller than them, you had more power than them. Like, yes, they had armies, but you had brute force and people who wanted to die in battle no matter what.
Bro,
Screaming
like
about Valhalla.
me
And
and
you
my
guys
friends
still lost.
always me and my friends always make that joke that the first Viking king that came up with the concept of Valhalla must have hit the jackpot.
That's good
Truly,
PR right there, man.
truly, because bro, these guys were always ready to fight, but they just didn't think far. Like they never thought far. Even some of the best thinking people, like I don't know,
Ragnar
Ragnar.
tried, man. He
Like
tried.
he tried, he went far, but his sons, they dropped the ball. Oh my god. Each one of them dropped the ball one after the other at different times. Like it was kind of like they were just passing the buck around and it was weird. But yeah, either way, both shows are good. And yeah, family, did you look it up?
Yeah, I did. It's her, like literally Ethel Floods or whatever his daughter. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it's
couldn't
pretty
believe it.
cool. Yeah, I just thought those naming conventions were funny. And it's George R. R. Martin also he just has a sense of humor, I guess. I think maybe he's trying to challenge himself. It's like, how many names can I come up with that sound the same? He's done really funny names too. Like they mentioned Lord Grover in this
Elmo.
in this season, right? Lord Grover is an interesting one. He's the person who currently rules River Run, not the Tullys. They come. That's a whole other story. But
No,
just
he's
know
a
that
Tully. Grover
I mean,
Tully.
he isn't there a house named Grover?
No,
Or
his
there,
name is Grover Tully.
his name is Grover Tully.
Yeah, and his sons are Elmo and
I was so
sorry, Brother
confused that his
Ernie
son,
Tully.
he has a son named Elmo, and his grandson, like Elmo's son, is named Kermit.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Okay, so I'm gonna start again. So, the guy who currently rules River Run, Grover Tully, he's mentioned in this season. George R. R. Martin clearly has a sense of humor, like I said, because he has sort of I don't know. His son is named Elmo, and his grandson is named Kermit, and I don't even like. Sometimes I see names in this show. Sometimes I'm like, maybe which one of his friends is he shouting out? Like, he's just like, I'm going to put your name in the book. I just think
Yeah.
that's really interesting. But I don't know. Did you guys have any standout moments outside of those main episodes?
What
like
do you mean?
the ones that we said
Rhaenyra's
were the best.
crowning, bro.
Yeah,
I almost
yeah,
shed tears.
yeah. She looked good in that crown, man.
I'm not gonna
Rhaenyra
lie
looked
to
good in
you.
that crown.
Ashley got down and
I was
knelt
on one
because
knee.
I got on one knee and knelt. As somebody
I was
got me
like,
on camera, I just need to make sure that that
"That's
video
my
never comes
queen."
out. Oh my god, yeah, that video was
Nah,
about to make it to the internet.
that
Oh
was a
god.
beautiful scene, man.
Yeah, Rhaenyra. It was just so beautiful compared to like the nonsense of Aegon. Aegon scene when he was out here holding his sword, going, "Yeah, yeah."
No, but here's the thing about that moment. It's a very ominous thing for everybody who like is paying attention, but it's also an interesting thing from a writing perspective, both like from our side and from inside the world, because it's a cool moment of Game of Thrones informing House of the Dragon. It's a cool moment on them building on ideas that they've already given us. And what I'm talking about is there's a point where Tyrion tells Cersei it's hard to put a leash on a dog once you put a crown on its head. And he's talking
Yeah.
about Joffrey. And this is very, very similar to that. Aegon doesn't want to be king. He's trying to run away. He is fully a waste man. Like you have that. I've talked like we talked before about the different kings, different Aegons. I mentioned them a few moments ago. I mean, you had like Aegon the Unlikely, Aegon the Unworthy, Aegon the Distant, if you want to count Jon Snow. There's Aegon the Conqueror. There's Aegon the Conqueror, right? This is Aegon the Wasteman, right? I'm going to call him. I think his official name from now on is going to be Aegon the Wasteman, Aegon the Second, right? And he doesn't want any of this stuff. But look at the change in his face once he starts lifting up that sword and realizing that the people are screaming for him. The people want him. The people like him. There's actually even a similar moment in Game of Thrones where Marjorie takes Joffrey out when they're walking through the Sept, and she takes him out of that area to see the people who are just standing outside because they know the king is there and they want to get a glimpse of him. And she
Yeah.
teaches him how to wave to the masses. That's a very interesting thing to me. Yeah. Oh my god, you reminded me of the crown with the strange thing. That's too funny. But yeah, I think that's kind of a fun moment of Game of Thrones sort of informing House of the Dragon and building on ideas.
Yeah.
Because in all honesty, this is a worse situation than that. Imagine Joffrey had a dragon. Can you just imagine that for a moment?
And
Like,
also the thing is like the reason why it's even worse, apart from the whole dragon thing, is from everything we're seeing in this world, the Targaryens are accepted god. Like
Yeah.
everyone just accepts that these guys are born to rule. There are kings. There's
because
no
you have no choice
descent.
but to do so. Yeah.
Yes, there is
It-
no
it-
descent. Nothing.
Yeah.
So like the
Imagine because
whole
they have
dance,
dragons.
yes, the whole dance of the dragons is between them. No one from the
Yeah.
outside is ever gonna think, you know what, fuck these guys, man. They're just human beings like the rest of us.
And even if you think it's like you have no chance, there's no chance. The only way they could have gone down is by destroying themselves. That's the
Yeah.
the only thing that could tear the House of Dragon apart is itself. Rhaenyra said it. Jaehaerys knew it, which is why he tried to do the council. But let's look how well that went. I mean, I don't know. There's just so many things that we can think about as to how things could be worse and what it would be like if the Targaryens were actually challengeable, but they're not. So yeah, that's very interesting to me.
Is it question time?
I'm gonna say yes. Yes, it is. But before that, I'm gonna say I'm gonna do like a little bit of a shout out to some of the crazy moments that we've seen this season. Um, I know we talked about like some interesting categories of stuff that we could evaluate, like um, the house that played the game the best, the most popular incestuous couple. That particular one was Barclay's idea. I don't know what he was thinking last night, but um, there's a and also just a moment of throwing shade. But one that I'm really thinking about is kind of like the holy crap, what how am I seeing this on TV type of thing. And I personally, and I think Barkley agrees with me. I don't know about you guys, but it's the childbirths, man. Like
Yeah.
I think men have been allowed to not really think too deeply about childbirth for a long time, especially when it comes to watching TV. And this show is just like, oh, you don't know how this goes. Here you go. It's wild. Like it kind of makes you realize that childbirth is a very dangerous thing. Like it just reminds you of that. And you hear about people dying in childbirth like in old times all the time, and you're like, why is this such a high death rate? And now like there were just so many things that weren't working out for them.
Yeah,
And I
I
don't
mean
even
it's
know
even
which
still high
child, but
now. It's like the mortality rate, but in the US
yeah,
has a
it is
surprisingly
still
high
it is still
mortality
high,
rate.
especially if you're a person of color. But this is
Yeah,
not a place I can suppose. But I don't know. It's kind of interesting to me because all the different scenes, like Emma Aaron, she said it. She really informed a lot of the performances on this show and a lot of the conversations just by being there for like half an episode.
yeah, I know, so
Like
impactful.
Sean Brooks was just amazing in that. I don't know. She told Rhaenyra the birthing bed is our battlefield, and that could not have been more true for so many different people. And I think it was Sarah Hess who said that they wanted to do something different to show that there are different styles of childbirth. Like Emma's lying on her back, which is like the classic thing we see on like if you're watching Grey's Anatomy or TV shows like that. Um, Lena is on all fours.
Rhaenyra was pacing around.
Rhaenyra was pissing, and then she actually even started squatting. And I don't know which one got me the most. Like, like
It
I've
was
talked to some of
Emma's
my
man.
female friends who watched the series, and they're just like, I know one of them was saying that the birth of Rhaenyra's stillborn child was just like she said she felt it in her soul. Like, that one was that one was a lot to deal with. I mean, because they showed the child like dropping out of her.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm just like, wow, this is 2022 TV. Like they're not pulling any punches, and I think that's kind of fun. But actually, do you guys have anything for any of those other things I mentioned, like house that played the game best, most popular couple that probably shouldn't be a couple,
all right. Well, let's start
biggest
with
moments of throwing shade?
the biggest incestuous couple is Rainier and Damon. Any other answer is wrong, and you should fight me. It's Rainier and Damon.
That's
Hello,
fair.
uncle,
I do have
husband.
a soft spot for the strong Valarians and the Daemon Targaryen daughters. I think that's kind of
Sure,
a
sure, sure.
nice
I like the
touch.
twins.
Those
Yeah.
niggas are
Just
too excited to get some black women, bro. They're too gassed.
Can you
uh,
like, I look at their faces like it's so funny because I've talked about this with a bunch of people about how those guys are just like happy about it. And first of all, from an in-world perspective, they actually like each other. Like how many couples in Game of Thrones in general are happy to be married
yeah,
to each other?
yeah.
Usually people who want to be married can't be married, and people who are married are just angry with each other all the time. So this is kind of a nice soft spot, which is why like the hand of George R. R. Martin had to just come down and grab Lucerys and be like, nah, to heck with you guys. Like it's
And Vigor literally grabbed him
yeah,
and chopped
literally
that dude up like a goddamn
like
samosa. Goddamn.
it was just sad. But yeah, I think that probably deserves a good shout out. But I'd say in
Yeah,
general, Damon and Rhaenyra take the
yeah.
cake for most
Also,
people.
Viserys and Emma.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. It's easy to forget that they're little cousins,
Yeah,
but
the only
yes,
Targaryens not, in the whole family, the only like marriage that has not been incestuous was
Viserys
Viserys
and
and
Alicent.
Alicent. That's it. And look at the children that they sired. Two of them are married, and then two of them are waste men. Only Helena. I love
Um,
Helena.
yeah. Moments of shade. Um,
Oh, I'm gonna steal Banquelism because I brought it up when they said it is when Alicent tells
keep trying,
Lena.
Selena. You might get one who looks like you.
Yeah, obviously,
See,
How can
you
she
know
say
the
that
thing
to his
is,
face?
one thing. I don't know if we ever will get to the criticisms of the season or the characters or whatever,
Oh, we
but
will.
I don't feel like Alison was consistent. You can't go from saying something like that to a woman who just gave birth, like in front of her, to then pretending
Hmm.
like you actually care about this. Well, I don't know.
no,
I just didn't feel she was consistent. Are you
she was
evil
not.
or are you remorseful?
But
Which
that's
is
the
it?
thing. Time was passing. Like that's the issue with it. I think that's how they were able to sort of justify a lot of those things because they showed with each time skip how all the characters were changing and how they were developing in their own perspectives. When Alison says that she's still extremely salty with Rhaenyra after those 10 years, she's still buddy buddy with Kristen Cole. They're walking around like scheming. Then by the time she says what she says to Rhaenyra at that table, it's been like 6 or 7 years, right? So and she's also become a bit of a religious person. So I think that she was trying to be a better individual and she was trying to make better decisions and have more meaningful relationships. So it kind of makes sense that she would kind of want to be on the good side. I think, if anything, it wouldn't surprise me if they saw that some people might see that as an inconsistency and then inserted the religion in there to kind of make it feel like a reasonable choice that she would have made, like an agency thing, rather than the writers just like making her make conflicting decisions. So that sort
Fair,
of makes sense to me.
fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
My personal
You're not the first
favorite
person to say this to me though.
my personal favorite shady moments is a toast to my nephews. They're so
Oh,
because anywhere else, and I've heard that in the books, there's actually ambiguity about which of them is a bastard, right? Anywhere else, that would have just been a completely normal toast. Like it would have raised a couple eyebrows, but
he
if it was
said
in
has
public,
some strong boys.
yeah,
That guy knew what he was doing, bro.
You know the funny
anywhere
thing?
else, it would have just raised eyebrows, and everyone would have like moved on.
Yeah. The funny thing about that scene is that I don't even think that's the biggest shade in that scene. I think the bigger shade is the pig. It's the
Oh,
pig that
Oh
was dropped
yeah.
in front of him and one eye. Lucerys looks at him and starts laughing
Nah,
because
man, Lucerys died for that joke.
he
That's
died for that
exactly
joke.
he died for that joke.
but you would know something silly, right? The first time I watched like not that episode, the episode before, yeah. To me, that was just harmless cousin banter. Amon might
Yeah.
just be a psychopath.
Might.
Yeah.
The guy
Might.
took it personal. I was like, bro, they were just playing with you, man. And at that point,
Might.
I thought it was cute, like because I knew nothing about the dance of this. I was like, oh, this is cute. Like all the cousins are like friendly. It's their parents that
Yeah.
have beef.
Okay, so you felt like things were actually going to be okay at that moment.
No, I thought the fight would be between the parents, and then the kids would be, together.
Nah.
I
Nah, bro.
was
The
wrong.
parents reconciled. It was the kids that carried it on.
Man, that's why I've been talking about generational conflict this whole time because you don't pass Viserys. You don't pass. This show started off at Viserys versus Daemon. Look at what happened at the end.
Yeah,
It was
man.
Viserys versus fucking Aemon. It's like it's generational, man. It's too late. It's too late for all these peaceful resolutions.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll have to see how it goes. But I guess we can get into questions now.
Yeah. So the one question I got asked was that the person basically said that they're a fan of the show. They've been following the podcast, uh, but they want to know more. Like, where can they go for more information? If you're interested in
Don't.
well, if you want to spoil the future of the show, there are three things you can do. One, read Fire and Blood. That's the biggest one, the biggest book, and it has the most information, and it's centered around early rules of the early Targaryen rulers. Fire and Blood. If that is too big for you, you can read The Princess and the Queen. That's another book. It's much shorter.
Short
Than
novella, the
the
original
short.
telling of the story.
Yeah, and so it's a lot shorter. So you lose a lot of details, but you get away with the gist of it. And the third one is The Rogue Prince, which is another short story by George about Daemon Targaryen. So those three would be kind of where I would start if you're interested in learning more about the story.
Please stay away from the wiki. Please,
Yeah,
I
don't go
beg
to
you,
the
in the
wiki.
name
The
of
wiki
God.
just spoils everything for you. I mean,
Like
it's
you'll be
useful.
reading one thing, you think you're in control, and then they just like happily and casually mention, oh yeah, and then when this person died, that also like wait, hold on, wait. Hold
Read
on.
the wiki when you're done with Fire and Blood. If you read Fire and Blood, you
Bro,
can go on the wiki.
I would actually advise you not to Google any. It could be something
Do
as
not.
innocuous as a dragon, and they'll tell you, "Oh, this was the rider after this person
Yeah,
died."
exactly,
Facts,
exactly.
like you're
Don't.
not in control of the Googling situation. Don't do it.
Yeah, that's what I would tell you right now. Fire and Blood, Fire and Blood, The Princess and the Queen, The Road Prince. You can Google those three things and buy the book. If you hit any wiki, I can help you. Godspeed.
Okay. I think that actually lays up one of the questions I received quite well, which is just a pretty general, spoiler free request for what we can expect in season 2. So, what can we tell this person?
Fire, fire, burn them. Go full hand for
Okay,
fire.
so Fire and Blood, you can expect a little bit of character growth. You can expect actually some interesting character introductions. There are going to be some people that some people who exist right now that you don't know about. There are going to be some people that you may not have really expected to see at all, and I'm looking forward to actually seeing how they cast some of those roles.
Yeah,
So
there's
yeah,
a character that's a main player in the books who should have been introduced by now. but they haven't introduced. But in
We're
the
trying
last
so hard
two
to not say this
episodes,
person's name.
well, I'm not going to say the person's name, but in the last two episodes, any keen observer of the title sequence will see that they introduced the character,
Yeah, the person
and
is there.
his sigil is a cup. That's all I'll say. Just look for the cup in the title sequence. That's a new character that's coming
You've
in next
basically
season.
just given it to them.
No, I haven't. No, I haven't. I haven't said anything. Just
Yeah,
look at
that's
the
fair.
title sequence.
Yeah. Speaking of which, the title sequence really did develop this season. I like what they
Yeah.
were doing. It felt like a nice progression, a really good build on the foundation of what Game of Thrones did with its own title sequence. I thought that was nice. Um, what else? I'm gonna say. Well, one other thing that I was asked was how we've talked a lot about how women are a lot more measured in making decisions about going to war. Um, but then there's a little bit of a gripe because, and this is the question: do we think Rhaenyra and maybe even Alicent are showing a bit too much restraint? Like this person was like, if it was me and I saw Otto pull up to talk nonsense and say Aegon took my crown, like it's on site. So,
Honestly, honest to
what
God,
what do you think
I still don't know why they didn't kill Otto.
when he came
Hon-
in episode 10?
yes, honestly, that's a big problem I have. They should have killed that guy because worst case scenario, they get slightly reduced. No one is. I don't think Aegon is going to go to war for his grandfather. Like that would have just been a collateral. Like yeah, he
I
went and
think
didn't
probably
come back.
you have a fair point because I think the Greens at most would have been like, why did he go there? You know, like who sent him? And well, to be fair, the actual answer to that question is Alison sent him. I don't
Alicent,
know
yeah.
why he shouldn't
Alicent
have
did.
gone there, but Alison sent him. Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think at that point, both Rhaenyra and Alicent were trying to play it safe, trying to play
Yeah.
it cordial, trying to play it honorably, right? Afam has told you guys before that this whole period is called the Battle of Letters and Ravens, you know. But then Lucerys gets killed, and the Battle of Fire and Blood starts. I think they really wanted to do it without bloodshed. They both wanted to honor Viserys. Viserys would not have wanted them to kill Otto, and I think they wanted to do what would have, you know, kind of caused the least trouble. If Damon was there alone, Otto would have died,
No
and
facts. Great
he was
facts.
ready to kill him. You know, even Cyrax, Rhaenyra's dragon, was ready to kill him, and Cyrax is usually kind of docile. But Rhaenyra decides to kind of stop things. So I guess we'll have to see if there are any repercussions to that. Um,
Also, Rhaenyra probably didn't want to look petulant. You know, that's
yes,
probably the reason
exactly.
why Rhaenys didn't throw a tantrum too when they passed over her for the crown because
Yeah.
it would have been, you know, oh, women are so
She knows the
emotional.
world she's living in, and she has to like if she's gonna get called a scorn woman, it shouldn't be because of something she actually did. Like she doesn't need to help their agenda. Though speaking of dragons and rainies, I've been getting a lot of questions and about that scene where she comes out from the ground, and people seem to still have a lot of problems with it. Um, one friend actually asked me about that yesterday, and what I said was it sort of is revelatory about her character. I think there is a lot to be said for the fact that she could have escaped later in the day. She could have maybe gone with Eric. She could have waited around, but she decided to make that moment hers, be very powerful, and you know, sort of face up to these people and show them that they don't have any real power, at least not right now. But I think there's also the real irony. And again, I know I'm champion of the small folk here, but there's real irony in the fact that she kills like 1,000 people in the process and does not think about it. You didn't have to come through the floor while all these people were standing there. You did it because of clout. Now, what I will say is she had a lot going on her mind. I know it's easy to say that that was an unprovoked attack, but it was provoked. Like she was defending herself because they were. She had no idea what they were going to do to her. They locked her in her room. The only reason she was there in the first place was because Eric broke her out. So I think it's sort of a like it's kind of a I don't know, I guess a study into how nobility is always playing these games with each other, and then the small folk are just used as dispensable pieces on the board. Like nobody even thinks about the fact that all these people are dying, and I love that because the show forces us, the audience, to actually take note of this, because they put a lot of work into showing different people dying in different ways. They showed debris, they showed rocks, they showed like dragon tails like knocking people off their shoulders. Like it's just a lot going on there. And again, there's something that's going to happen later in the series that people are saying this is going to cause some problems for, but I really don't think it's going to be an issue. So I think that's something that's worth addressing. However, one other question, and I'm going to throw this one to Fami, is can we say Rhaenys is jealous of Rhaenyra?
No, she's
Fantastic,
not.
because I had a question about that. Is Rhaenys hating or is she proud of Rhaenyra?
I
I
think
still
she's
can't tell.
proud. See, I think she's starting to live it vicariously, but I don't know, Fami, what do you think?
Yeah, I think Rhaenys is not jealous. Rhaenys has given up all ambition for the throne. She wanted it at some point, and it passed over her. And she realized that there was no point in, at least I believe, she realized there's no point in dragging my family and my kids into a pointless conflict. She just kind of let it go. And I
Yeah,
think that she has obviously been watching Rhaenyra from when Rhaenyra was young, and she told Rhaenyra that these people are going to pass over you the same way they passed over me. And I think she. It looks to me that she has been surprised by the moves Rhaenyra has been making, so she's come to the point where she's proud of her, which is why
because
she
she's made it
agreed to
farther than Rhaenys ever did.
exactly that, which is why she agreed to betroth her two grandchildren, who are like the only thing she's basically like living for, and like you know she loves those children because they are her daughter's children, and they're the only family she has left, other than Corlys, who was missing for a long time, and also the
Missing
restraint.
the nah.
Well, he
Let's
was like in fighting,
yeah.
pointless war. Well,
Yeah,
he
he
won this
absconded.
episode. Yeah, he ran
Yeah.
away. But yeah, it's
Drag that
also
nigga.
also she was watching Rhaenyra in the War Council in episode 10 and seeing how she was
Do we need
making
to
like
have a
good
conversation about
performances.
the casting in Game of Thrones? Because two niggas have abandoned their family so far, and it's two black.
They were black.
It's
Wow.
so crazy. Like, I was thinking about this the other day because one of the questions I would have is like, okay, so where were all these black people in Game of Thrones? And there's so many in-world explanations I can come up with that would make sense. But I think we know why they were not there in the original show. Times have changed a little bit now. They really haven't changed, but they've changed a little bit. And like, I like that we have some people running the show now that want to make those changes. And I do
Yeah.
think we've come far, but it's just like what I said when it came to episode 5. We light the way. How it's really progressive to see someone like Geoffrey Lonmouth on screen playing what is ostensibly a, a pivotal role, at least up until the point where he's no longer playing roles, right? But in the end, what it is a straight guy being found out and called out by a gay guy and then proceeding to beat that gay guy to death. Now, in this
Yeah.
case, we have black people in a position of power, probably the highest position of power. They have a lot of money, they have a lot of influence, they're aspirational. And then like the patriarch of the family leaves to fight because he's annoyed at the world, and then his son leaves with his boyfriend because he wants freedom. It's like, okay, so I don't know if that's sending a message like, okay, black people can be in power, but at the same time they may not necessarily know what to do with it. It's reminding me of all those things where like people talk about like I don't even know where to go with that. Like I don't want to get overly like political about it or like in I guess link it too closely to our own world. But I think people have a lot of conflict when it comes to those portrayals. It's like how Game of Thrones, for example, one could say that one of the final messages of it is women don't really have the capacity to rule without emotion, because every woman of power that was in the show ended up, not doing so great
See,
by the end.
see,
Hey,
Cersei,
Sansa,
Daenerys,
Sansa, Sansa.
Sansa, yes, but after they said, "Yeah, I'm really happy I got raped because it brought me to where I am today."
Yeah.
listen.
Honestly,
I
I
was
haven't
going to
forgiven
say
Sansa.
when I first brought this point up, it was just me being a Daenerys stan. But we're going to one day they will look at George R. R. Martin once he finishes the books, and like we can accost him for something else. They will
Yeah,
accost him for his female characters
yeah.
So in a good or
Honestly,
bad
it's
way?
in a
in a
bad way.
bad way.
Wait, why?
Yeah,
I think he has very good like women characters. What?
I think he does. However, he doesn't seem to. the decisions he has them making at times seem to be a little bit informed by a little bit too much by patriarchy. And like, of course, there's patriarchy in there. This is Game of Thrones, but I think you write compelling characters, you make them strong, you make them interesting, and you make them have agency. You kind of like, I think creating good characters is sort of putting a lot of interesting traits together and then calling that a human being and then putting them in a box and seeing what they do. It's kind of like an experiment. And I think a lot of those experiments went well. I think George R. R. Martin's case, he's doing a better job than what Game of Thrones did, at least towards the end. It's like he's doing a better job in the books. Benioff and Weiss were in a rush. We don't really, I mean, we can't speak to all their decision making in the show. However, what we do know is that Daenerys, probably the most powerful promised child in all of promised children, at least in this world, ended up killed by the man she loved, and it was portrayed in such a way that like he was right and she was wrong, and he had to kill her to save the world. Like, of all the heroic moments you could have given Jon Snow, the one you want to give him is, I'm going to kill my girlfriend because I don't want her to kill other people. Like,
In a
you didn't really
coward's
have
way too. They couldn't even
yeah,
fight on Dragon back.
they could have found a dragon back. He couldn't make it clear that like, oh, I want to kill you. Like, he lured her into a position of comfort, of safety. He was kissing her, and can you imagine kissing somebody and then you suddenly like realize you're bleeding from the heart? Like, what? That's pretty wild. And then Cersei, death by rocks. Don't get me wrong, I wanted Cersei to die. However, like, he once she got on the throne, she became very, 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 very incompetent. Now, Cersei was always bound to be incompetent in my mind because, and Tywin has said this to her before. I don't trust you because I don't mistrust you because you're a woman. I mistrust you because you're not as smart as you think you are. And Cersei was always trying to do too much. Essentially, she was always trying to overplay her hand due to overconfidence, and that's something that was always going to bite her in the ass. But at the same time, I think that probably she could have done more when she was on the throne. Like, everything kind of just like all her decisions were informed by emotions and vindictiveness. Like, there aren't a lot of women in powerful positions in Game of Thrones that are shown to be acting based on restraint and measuring the consequences, even when those people had those traits before they came into power. Does that make sense? Whereas in House of the Dragon, the restrained and measured responses of the women in power are consistent with their characters throughout. I think that's one thing that House of Dragon has improved on. Basically, it's showing that women in power are capable. Now, there's a lot to be said for whether or not these portrayals are consistent. Like, I've heard some people, for example, saying that, the show is kind of nerfing Rhaenyra and Alicent, that like they know how the game is supposed to be played, but they're playing it nice just so like certain things can happen, or just so they don't have to fight here and there. And I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but at the same time, I think it's just that's just a pacing thing. And right now, I'm a fan of the pacing, so I think we'll just leave that as is. But bottom line, I'd say House of Dragon is doing a better job of showing women in powerful positions making decisions that make sense.
Hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I don't know how. I don't know how to think about that a bit more. I mean, I think the central problem here is that in my mind's eye, I see the characters how they're described in the books, not the shows. The show is like supplementary to me. So when I see like some of the decisions some of the characters are making in both, I have more of a. I've seen more about of the decision. Like, I feel like House of the Dragon, it's just like it's a lot. It's very truncated in terms of the storyline. Whereas in Game of Thrones, I felt like we got into the weeds a bit more. So, and when you get into the weeds a bit more, that's when you see that ruling is not just a straightforward thing. Like, if we're talking about women in position making decisions, like, which of the men made good decisions? Everybody was making dumb decisions in everything. Like
Yeah.
in Game of Thrones and House of the Dragons, everybody was making dumb decisions. I mean, the
Well,
first
that's
few
fair, I
episodes
guess.
was Viserys making bad decisions, and I stand by that. uh,
Yeah, that is true.
but no, Sansa. I'm still angry at Sansa for betraying Jon, man. To this day, still pissed off. Shouldn't have done that. Jon made them swear, and then she told. Oh, it pisses me off.
Like, she wasted no time with that, and I don't know if that's even something we can explain under reasonable circumstances? Like,
I'm
is
chucking it
that
down
something
to
she would
Dan
have
and
done?
David. I'm chucking it down to Dan and David. I'm just waiting for George to finish with the winter, then I can actually have
Yeah,
a whatever.
it is what it is. But actually, but before we sort of close out this whole thing on women in power, can we say that Rennie's declared war on the Greens?
Can you
Not necessarily
say?
for Rhaenyra. Like, would she say like? Can we say that she is fully against them?
Oh yeah, she
Like,
is. She is. She
I
is.
mean, I
She's
know
a
we
different
can,
breed.
but somebody was telling me that she's sort of declared war on them, and I don't know if she has. I think she just left and said,
Yeah.
like, leave me alone. I don't know if we can
She.
call it
No,
declaring war,
yeah,
even on
she
her own
basically
part.
told them there will be consequences.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree. I agree. She
yeah.
basically was like,
On
yeah, I see you, motherfuckers.
Yeah. Speaking of consequences, another question I got was why was Kristen Cole not punished for the murder of Geoffrey Lonmouth and all the other things he
Alicent.
did that day? Alicent is
and
definitely the short answer.
that's
Yeah.
Yeah.
that. God damn.
So
Let's not even get into
we,
Kristen Cole,
we should.
because
So
I
We
have
should get into Kristen Cole.
I
I
have
read
one
this.
central question. I've been
Yeah.
asking everyone this question, and no one has been able to answer me this. What thing they actually worries is Christian Cole guy? Like, what's his actual? Like, I don't care. Like, what's his actual problem? Like, you know how many times
Small man
I've
Chris.
paused, I've paused the thing to be like, what's actually wrong with this guy? Like, what's his problem?
I can actually imagine. I can actually imagine you just like watching the show, pausing, like rubbing your forehead, and being like, "What's wrong, man? Like, what is up with you?"
Good. No,
Oh my
so
god!
I read this thing that there was like a deleted scene where Jeffrey Longmont, when he's talking to Kristen Cole at the wedding, where he then Cole then kills Joffrey, he basically tells Cole that, oh, Rhaenyra took the moon tea, like the morning after pill in Westeros. So part of the reason why he acted out and killed Joffrey was because he felt a rage because Rhaenyra had aborted their baby, and then he was filled with, it's no
Why would he even be?
justification.
Why would he be enraged about that? That
I
saves his
don't
ass.
know, because I don't know, I think he's just misplaced, like he's first of all toxic, and then it's just misplaced energy, like he felt like I don't know, man. I actually don't want to talk about that dude anymore. It just annoys me. I don't want to justify. I feel like I'm justifying his actions
Nah,
when I
like
try to explain them.
you know what? Like the short answer to the question is Alicent, right? But if you want to get a little bit deeper as to why he wasn't punished, I'm gonna say it's because the Valarians didn't press charges. And the reason I'm saying that is, first of okay, he had like three main things that he did like that day. Let's get into two of them, shall we? So the first one is punching Joffrey punching Lena when he was trying to stop him from beating Joffrey and knowing the fight was going on. Now they're not going to get into that one, the Valarians, because it's like, okay, Lena, a knight who is battle hardened, was punched by another knight. That's kind of just like fair play. I don't know, like it's foul play, but it's fair play in the sense that like them coming to get Kristen's head for that would be like calling Lena weak in a sense. So I don't think they would do that. I don't think it's as significant, and that's not something a lot of people witnessed. What people were focused on at that moment was trying to get out of the way and trying to figure out what the commotion was. And when they figured out that commotion, it was his second offense, which was beating Joffrey to death. Now, the Valarians wouldn't press charges on that either, because doing so would expose Lena as being homosexual. And that's not something they wanted to do, even though they themselves were fine with it. On top of that, he had Alison's protection, and they formed that alliance right there. He was ready to kind of die for his crimes. I think he was just he felt he had nothing to lose, so he's like, I'm just gonna give in, and this will be the end. I have nothing to live for anymore. But Alison shows him that he does have something to live for, and that's why they have such an alliance post time skip. So that's I'm gonna say that's why he wasn't punished. Over time, like these things would just ended up becoming hearsay. However, having said all that, I don't know, men can just honestly be like crazy in this whole romantic thing, and that's something I was thinking about when it came to Kristen and Rhaenyra, because it's just romantic entitlement, because like look at Rhaenyra, like imagine her being the crown princess, like the heir to a multi-century dynasty that is the sustained legacy of what is supposed to be the greatest civilization that's ever existed, and you still have to deal with passive aggression from a guy like Kristen Cole. Like,
Who?
what actually is life?
No,
I mean,
actually, this is good because this actually points me to what I feel was the shadiest moment of the season was actually Rhaenyra's face when this nigga told her to go and pick oranges with him. She was like, "You're not being serious.
uh, yo.
You're not being for real, right?"
Yeah, and he responded by facilitating the bullying of her children. Like, it's just such a bad cycle. Like, why is Chris such a problem? He does
Big
this
man.
doesn't have to be this way. I don't know. I think I think that it's just really like intense and weird and such because people are growing and we see how they're developing in terms of character, but some people aren't really changing as much. They're not being as responsible in their own decision making and they just carry these grudges. um it's like it's like these things where like you know how in life you get into meetings or like situations where you reunite with people that represent a past era of your life, like maybe secondary school people or like people you used to know in like college or from a previous job or whatever, and then you suddenly become that kid or that person again. For better or worse, you start to feel all kinds of things dredging up. I think that's essentially what happens between Rhaenyra and Alicent, especially after the time skip. Except that they're so accustomed to it that it's just the norm in their relationship. Like they don't realize that their relationship is stuck. They don't grow at all, and they're still the teenage girls that went through a breach of trust. Like they're just emotionally stagnant in their bond, and they're blocked off from any real chance to heal. At least up until the point where Viserys makes his speech, but then that doesn't really do much either. I mean, it kind of does, especially since they were trying to be measured with each other in those final two episodes. But now Lucerys is dead, and season two is going to be a different ball game. So yeah. Okay, so the one thing a close friend of mine was actually telling me that he has a comment and that he hopes everybody who listens to Popcorn for Dinner hears this, and that is that Daenerys is more Alicent than Rhaenyra. Now, he said this is a hot take, and this guy, I should point out, has always been a Daenerys hater. But he said Daenerys equals Alicent equals Karen. How do we feel about this?
Well, I feel like there are three Daenerys. Daenerys in the first few episodes, then Daenerys up until she arrived in Westeros, and Daenerys when Dan
Mm-hmm.
and David decided to destroy her. Um, I've said this
Destroy is a
time
good
and time.
word.
I've said this time and time again. Rhaenyra is not Daenerys. Rhaenyra is Arya. So to even put that comparison is just. I mean, if you're going to say one or the other, it has to be Rhaenyra, not Alicent. The last season, yeah, even when oh my god, even when Daenerys was being butchered, I don't think she was being like a bad bear like Alicent. She was just like, well, she was just being gaslit, and like people were just like, I don't like to talk about that last season, but no, I don't think she's closer to
You're
Alicent
so
than Rhaenyra.
traumatized.
I am, man,
What
I
is
am.
this?
It's like, and the painful thing is like the Mad Queen theory is like a thing. It can happen. Like the Targaryens, you know how these motherfuckers be, two sides of the
It
same
could have
coin.
been done well. It just wasn't.
Yeah, I can even make the argument that Daenerys can be more similar to Daemon, if anything, not even Alicent or Rhaenyra, but she's not as unhinged as Daemon. Actually, she crucified the Master. She burnt down King's Landing. She's done some stuff,
Yeah.
some Daemon stuff. I think she's more similar to Daemon than Alicent or Rhaenyra.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's probably a good point. Damon is sort of the answer that we didn't think about there. And like I said, we've sort of gotten a lot of insights into how these people really thought thanks to the show, because obviously the show is written by, as we said, people who weren't there for many moments, whereas Game of Thrones books are written from the points of view of those characters.
Yeah,
But this person actually also had a follow-up question, which is, it builds on the idea of what we said or what I was discussing earlier about how many of these events were told after the fact by all these different people. And I think this person wants to know if we would be upset if these writers got major things wrong, like if the book has told us something and it's been informing our sketch of things this whole time, and then all of a sudden the show is like, actually no, that's not what even happened. So it's not even that they're saying, like, there's not, so in this case it wouldn't be like the show is coloring events that were in black and white in the book is that the show is saying, nah, the book was wrong in this moment because these people were misinformed. Like, I don't know, would
I
that make you feel any type of way?
it won't. I love the
I
unreliable
think I'd love it,
narrator
to
is
be
like
honest.
is what I love. One of the things I love the most. There's a scene in the original books where Tyrion is in book five, I think. Tyrion is having a conversation with somebody and they're playing like a game of wits to try and see who's smarter. And they're basically quoting things from the Dance of the Dragons, like, oh, this person died doing that, that person died doing that.
Yep.
And then they're both one of them is wrong because the official account is wrong. And Tyrion just basically says this is wrong because XYZ, and they're like unreliable narration. I love that and I'm here for it.
It's nice. Yeah. And like just like the whole thing with Aemond and Vhagar, for example, I think that's kind of fun seeing us see his face after after Lucerys is killed, because he's just like, he has his face of like, oh my god, like I really
Yeah,
messed up here.
yeah. He was
And
blinking really hard.
he was really blinking like he just woke up. Um Somebody actually asked me, um the person said that she wants to know why Aemond is a bitch ass. She actually, I think she actually said, okay, so it was like bitch ass, and then she had a word after that, and then she redacted it because she wanted to just like calm down. She was trying to calm herself, and she's like, hey, can we still like, is it? I don't even put
Okay.
that question. Like, can we still add that question? I'm just like, okay, you want to ask us, you want us to explain why Aemond is this, and like, yeah, we can do that for you.
Okay.
So who wants to go
Can I,
first?
can I say something? I think I
Yes,
have
please.
a problem, right?
Okay.
Where one season is not enough to make me care about the death of a character. Because I remember in
Mm.
Hmm.
season one of Game of Thrones, Ned Stark died. I felt for Arya. I felt for the kids. But it didn't really hit me. I was like, oh, this is an honorable fool. Like, and the thing is, like, when I started watching Game of Thrones, I was behind everyone, so I knew that Jon Snow would die. Yes, but I didn't think I would feel anything until I only started liking Jon Snow until like season 3 and 4. That's when I was like, oh shit, like he can't. Like I would actually cry if this guy died. But yeah, Lucerys' death, I really didn't.
There
It
wasn't
didn't.
enough.
Yes, it didn't hit me.
Okay.
But yeah,
Yeah,
you guys can
I
you
feel
guys
you on
can
that.
speak on the Aemond and his character and why he is the way he is.
Yeah, Afram, what do you think?
About Aemon.
Yeah, like why is he the way he is?
Why does the sun
What is
rise in
worrying that
the?
guy?
Why does the
No,
sun rise and
just
set? Why
because.
is the earth flat? I don't know. Because this motherfucker is a dumbass. That's
Yeah, I
why.
mean, it's interesting though, because like, yes, you lost your eye when you were a kid. I'm not saying that's not trauma. And it was actually because of something his brother started. I mean, he's blaming the Valarians for this, but it was Aegon that started this bullying, and
Yeah.
he ended up getting himself the largest dragon. Like he said himself at the time, you know, I gained the dragon, but I lost an eye, but I gained the dragon. And, he then had the audacity to be shocked after what happened with Lucerys. So I don't know. I think Aemon is looking for a fight. I think he has a bone to pick. I think he's still that kid in the schoolyard or in the training yard who was sort of looked down on, even though he wanted to be good. And he's trying to show that he's toughened up. Like he's like, everybody who came for me back then, I'm ready to come for you now. Tell me when and where. And he just wants to like squash all that. He wants everything to be settled. And he's been trained by one of the most vindictive people in the game, Kristen Cole. So I don't know. It could lead to a lot of problems. I mean, he at this point he could fight anyone. Like if he could do what he did to Lucerys, just because he showed up in the same place that he was, God knows how he would act if he's faced with Damon or something like that, right? It's an interesting question, and I think it's also cool because it shows that Viserys was, like I said before, right about them not really being able to control the dragons. It's just like a dragon. It reminds me of something that was said in Game of Thrones a lot, actually. Um, and you can translate it from Valerian as a dragon is not a slave. Like Daenerys said that a couple of times, and it's true. Like these people think they fully control these creatures, they don't. I mean, it's wild that Daenerys is more right on this than some of her ancestors. Yeah,
Speaking on Aemond, I saw a TikTok and the person said they really like the way it was his attack on Lucerys was depicted in the show because it
yeah.
gives him a villain arc, right? Because
Yeah.
he has two choices
Mm,
now when he goes back to King's Landing. either he
You can
tells
say he was
them,
attacked or tell the
no,
truth.
no,
Yeah.
not even the attack. Either he tells them, yes, I'm the kinslayer. I killed my cousin because fuck that nigga, or he
He says,
admits
"I'm
to them,
sorry."
I'm too weak to control Vega. And like knowing Amon and like you said, him still trying to prove that he's the big man, he's not going to
Hmm.
want to tell them it was an accident. So he's going
Yeah.
to have to
Yeah.
accept everyone cursing him and hating him for being a kinslayer for something he didn't even do on purpose. So that probably
Well,
informs how he grows and develops as a villain or his character. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, it will be very cool to see how people react in the show when he gets back. So yeah, I don't know. I'm actually also interested to see not just how the Greens react, but like how Damon and some of the other people surrounding Rhaenyra react, because there could be a lot of developments there. Um, I feel like Damon would want to protect Rhaenyra, and he would want to essentially act on her behalf, like the same way Aemond is sort of Aegon's enforcer, or he's destined to be Aegon's enforcer in my mind. Damon is that for, or he's going to be that for Rhaenyra if he isn't already. So
mm,
yeah, I don't know, but I think that's basically all the questions. I have some other comments, but that's basically just like all the questions for now. There were like some theories as well, but I think we should probably just get into Ibuka's questions.
Oh, my questions aren't serious.
yeah.
My questions are things like, what's the deal with Helena? Like, what is
I think
she
she's on the
In what
always?
spectrum.
sense?
She's always saying some things. Like, I don't know if they're prophecies or whatever. But what is? She's
I think
not.
it could be that she has the whole dreaming gene. Like she
Yeah,
has a
like
bit
dragon
of
dreams.
a, yeah. She kind of has that whole thing where she can see the future but doesn't really know. But like I was saying in the previous episode, that these visions of hers are becoming more and more vivid. Like they're becoming more like literal.
Yeah,
Like it went from something like he'll have to close an eye and nobody knew what she was talking about,
Yeah,
to
yeah,
dragons of flesh weaving dragons of thread, to now she's literally saying, beware the beast beneath the boards.
yeah.
And a
yeah,
literal beast beneath the boards comes out. However, I will say that also in episode 9, which happens to be, in my mind, a character study of Aegon and how the people around him view him, not just as a person, but a potential ruler. He was the beast beneath the boards because they found him in the sept hiding under a table,
Yeah,
you
sure.
know. So that prophecy you can see in a bunch of different ways. And I think Helena is burdened with all this stuff and she kind of just like tries to cope by taking care of her children, talking to her mom whenever she can, and knitting her little bug tapestries. I don't know. She's just obsessed with bugs, and
Yeah.
honestly, it seems strange at first, but I'm glad that she has something that brings her some joy
I think she's
because
on the
it's not
spectrum,
Aegon.
man. I think she's on the spectrum
Maybe,
somewhere. Yeah.
maybe.
yeah.
There's a lot of symbolism in there, like with the dreams. Aegon and his sisters, Visenya and Rhaenys, really built everything. Um, in King's Landing, for example, you have the three hills. There's Aegon's Hill, there's Visenya's Hill, and there is Rhaenys' Hill. And Aegon's Hill has King's Landing. Visenya's Hill, I believe, has the Dragon Pit, and Rhaenys' Hill has, I think, the Sept. And you can see all these
Visenya has
little
the sept.
Visenya has a Sept.
Yeah.
Yes, Visenya has a Sept, and Rhaenys has the Dragon Pit. And I think it's cool actually, how Visenya has, like, she's not spoken about as much, but because Aegon was more in love with Rhaenys, and I mean Rhaenys' sister, not Rhaenys the queen, who never was. For anybody who's confused, I apologize. I did not make these names. But Daemon and Aemond are both carrying vestiges of Visenya, who in a lot of ways was like them both. In addition to being a little bit like Alicent, I think Visenya was the mother of Maegor, who effectively crowned her son in a situation that can only really be described as fire and blood, just like Alicent. And the crown she put on his head was that of his father, the Conqueror. And now, yes, it's taken like roughly 100 years, but the next person to wear that Aegon the Conqueror's crown after Maegor the Cruel is Aegon the Wasteman, and that says a lot because he's wearing that crown and he's carrying Visenya's he's carrying Aegon's sword as well, whereas Daemon is carrying Visenia's sword, Dark Sister, and Aemond is riding Visenia's dragon, Vagar. So these little like heirlooms, or I guess big heirlooms, have really been passed down in their family as weapons of war, and unfortunately, they're using them against each other. And I think that's kind of like a cruel irony.
When you bring up Maegor the Crow, it reminds me of this scene where Aemon is complaining about how he reads this, reads that, trains this, but Aegon is gonna be king. And I'm just thinking, if you want it so bad, nigga, you know you could just take it. Like you could have just said you don't want this guy to be the king. You feel like you deserve being the king more than him. Just start a revolt, man.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, revolts don't necessarily go well for everybody, but yeah.
Yeah, but if you think this guy is so actually that's another question I had. Do you guys think Aemond would have been better than Aegon as king?
No, I think he would
No?
have been a different type of bad.
Yeah.
Okay, just a different type of bad.
I think if the Aemond we saw um if the Aemond we saw Drift Driftmark and The Princess and the Queen episodes 6 and
Yeah.
7, or 7 and 6 respectively, um if that Aemond had grown up better, if that Aemond hadn't lost an eye, if that Aemond actually got the attention he needed, then yes. But the Aemond that he became, thanks to Kristen Cole and Alicent and all these other people, that's a problematic Aemond. And I think in episode 1, Otto says that Daemon would be a new Maegor the Cruel. And I actually think that's more likely to be someone like Aemond now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fair enough. I see that. I really see that.
Um, some questions from Twitter actually. We already talked about the one about where the black people are, but there's another one. Why is Kristen so peng but has such a nasty spirit? we basically covered that. I think we could do a whole study on Kristen Cole. But yeah, I think it's just that he doesn't realize that his lot in life is actually good. He could do a lot better. That question is actually from Priscilla, who has been covering the Rings of Power. And actually, someone else on Twitter asked why good King Viserys didn't choose Daemon as his hand after Lionel Strong was killed, and instead brought Otto back.
Help me
Yes.
Like had
asking.
like if he had forgiven Otto, why didn't hadn't he
Oh,
forgiven
Damon
Daemon?
wouldn't
And I
have
think
come back,
that's a
honestly.
very that's one answer. I don't know. What do you get? Ibuka, what do you think?
Honestly, that's a question I had. I was like, Otto messed up and you sent this guy away. Just let him go away. Like you still don't trust him. You
Yeah,
still feel like he has like a hidden mission. So just pick someone else. That's what I just said. I did think that
yeah.
was weird.
I think sending for Daemon would have been a good choice, but at the same time, I don't know if he felt that that was surely what he wanted. I feel like on some level he was kind of torn because they hadn't left things well and he hadn't talked to them on all this time. And I feel like reuniting through a letter asking him to come do this or do that would have broken both their prides in some way. And I don't think he was ready for that level of reconciliation because he would have had to say he was sorry first. He would have had to call him through. Sure, he doesn't necessarily need to do all that stuff since he's a king and he can just request things and have them on demand. But I think that he wanted to have a better relationship with Damon, or he wasn't sure how to go about that, which is why when they see each other at that funeral, he's trying to talk and Damon isn't really having it. Thankfully, they do reconcile at some point. I guess they become okay with each other at the very least. But it would have been interesting to see Damon as the hand because he would have protected his brother. And I guess he just felt that that's not something he could do, which is kind of sad. Like, that's something that probably he had available to him, but he didn't try to do that. Like, Viserys didn't really even protect himself in that way, and that's part of the tragedy in my mind.
Yeah, Viserys trusted Otto way too much. Because if he really knew, if he knew that what he was about to do and what he did for most of his life, sticking with Rhaenyra as his heir was going to be controversial. Surely he didn't think the realm would accept it lying down. He should have brought the family as close to him as possible. So, like,
Yeah.
he was basically alone in that court, wanting Rhaenyra to be king, to be queen after him. He needed more
Hmm.
people there who would stand on that side. So, Daemon, for example, I don't know who else he would have brought, honestly, because Rhaenys wouldn't have left Driftmark. But yeah, He needed more
Yeah,
Targaryens in there.
yeah, I
Oh,
agree with
also,
that.
this is a good question for you guys, but also something I found out before this episode, and will be a good
Hmm.
PSA to everyone that watches Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. There is a hierarchy of hair color because I've always been pissed off as to why Jon Snow was the only Targaryen with dark hair. But apparently, in the Game of Thrones world, there's like a blood strength table where some like families beat other families, and that's why the kids would have. For example, the strong blood is obviously stronger than
Hmm.
Targaryens, so that's why the
Yeah.
two kids have dark hair. He said
That is the reason. Yeah,
like
we've said
Well,
before that the Baratheon seed is strong, and
yeah.
it's the same thing for the Starks.
Yeah, and the
These
Baratheons, like
houses,
Rhaenys has black hair in the books. Like they changed it in the show just
yeah,
to make her more regal, and she because it's Baratheon blood, beats Targaryen blood.
yeah, she should have had like, I mean, yeah, it was an interesting change, and really it's fine. It doesn't change anything.
Yeah,
And also, like, it's something to be said about the blood of the first men. Both how strong and how Stark have the blood of the first men. I'm not really sure about House Baratheon. I think they're
no,
Andals.
Baratheons are Targaryens. Well, they're Targaryen bastards. Or is Baratheon the first Baratheon was
Oh yes,
Aemon's
yes.
bastard brother?
Well, bastard. So yeah, so it was a bastard with somebody that had the blood of the first man.
Probably,
So
yeah.
so yeah, like that. Essentially, the seed is strong, and that's why. Also, for reasons that I think we've talked about at length, Targaryen blood, the fidelity is not all that great, and I'm sure everybody listens to this can kind of glean why. It's something that I think is a cool detail to add in the show because yeah, like when you're writing such characters and they're in such a fictional way, you can kind of go anywhere with the hair color, and it says a lot about the people. I mean, the Lannisters are described as having golden hair, like different from the Targaryens, which is a lot more silver, but like their hair is golden and they have green eyes, and that's a family trait that you can see. Like you always know them when you see them, and that's one of the reasons. I mean, that Cersei is, considered at least in that world to be one of the most beautiful women in the kingdoms, and she kind of takes that to heart and internalizes it as something that makes her better than everyone else. So yeah, I talked a lot about the rats this season, and I'm still looking for a bit of a payoff to that. I don't know if there's a link between the rats eating away at the kingdom and the summer about like the imagery about the last supper, and who was sitting on either side of Viserys. Like the
Mm,
greens are kind of on the side of Viserys that's rotting, which is something that I saw, and then the side of Viserys that isn't rotting, that's where Rhaenyra's family is sitting. And I don't
yeah.
know if that's kind of a subtle nod to like who is contributing to this man's stress.
Well, one of my
um
friends had this point
yeah.
about how like it was like a metaphor for the rot and decay within the house, and it's mostly unseen. And the people who were mostly seeing the rats were Rhaenyra and were Alicent and Viserys, and she went on this spiel about like the rotting one. I don't know. One is rotting
Yeah,
physically, one is rotting emotionally. It's yeah,
the greens really bring in this idea of you know conflicting intentions. I know we always talk about how the Targaryens wed brother and sister to keep bloodlines pure, but I think it's also to kind of guard their secrets because they don't want the prophecy potentially getting out to other people. At least that's
mm,
something we know now. And I wonder if the dragons actually started to die off because they started being used for selfish political pursuits of power and ambition rather than the salvation of the world.
yeah,
Like maybe that's why they started to kind of lose certain levels of power and influence. By the time Game of Thrones starts, there's no magic in the world because dragons have all died. Like it's a different landscape, and they're
yeah.
struggling. At least John and people on his side are struggling to get people to you know figure things out and come together, and it just doesn't work out for any of them. And I wonder if that has to do with it because this now, like, we're getting a dilution of the amount of people who know this prophecy and can interpret it in their own way.
yeah.
Yeah, that's something I thought about, I guess. Wait, Ibuka, were you about to say something?
Oh no, no, no! I was just saying good
Oh,
point
okay, yeah,
about the
you were agreeing.
dragons. And
Yeah, it's something I thought about. I don't know. Yeah, that's basically it. I know one. I wondered if the show was kind of like choosing sides already, like planting seeds in the audience minds to make them like love Rhaenyra and hate Alicent. But I think it's a bit more nuanced than that, and season two will build on it. I
You
know that
know,
there are some people who don't hate Otto. That's a hot take I got from somebody that I don't hate Otto. He's just doing what he needs to do, and he's playing the game.
another reason why someone said the histories would not have been kind to Rhaenyra is that both men and women would have hated her at this time. Like, like she was making the block hot. Like you know when, like you know,
True.
because now all the men are like extra vigilant on their wives. Like, let me see that nigga's hair. Like, who's this guy that's always around you? So yeah, it would have been.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Um, but yeah, I think we can probably leave out other stuff we've mentioned, like the camera work and the production being good. I think we've talked about all the story points. But yeah, since family needs to go, and yeah, I'm sorry for all
You.
the jumping around and fourth wall breaking back on me. But yeah, we can probably. Are there any? Is there anything else we need to mention before
I
we
don't
close
think
out?
so.
Give the people something to look forward to for season two. Tell me.
Okay.
Actually, don't tell me. I was gonna say tell me how Kristen Cole dies, but don't tell me.
No, we don't
Okay.
do spoilers here.
Yeah, I think for season two, things are going to intensify, and they're going to be simultaneously more focused and yet more sprawling, in the sense that we're going to start to see lots of new directions that people will travel. Lots of new people will come into the fold, because obviously, like Rhaenyra and Alicent are gathering allies. We're going to meet some of those people. We're going to meet some people who probably will get used to the dragons as well. I mean, we've talked about how there are a lot of riderless dragons, so expect more dragon content. Expect more alliances, and in this world, alliances tend to lead to betrayals. So expect more of that too. And yeah, just expect more interesting production value. I think then the show is doing a fantastic job. I don't know when it's going to come out. Casey Bloys, who's in charge of programming at HBO, actually said something along the lines of "Don't expect season two of House of the Dragon in 2023," which is
Okay.
just hard hitting. I think they plan to start filming in early 2023. So if that's the case, then we'll probably get it in summer 2024, just like we did with this show. Because I think I started seeing stuff about like the casting and people reading the script and them starting to film in like January of 2021 or early 2021, something like that. And we got it summer 2022.
Can I say
So yeah.
that finale really scared me because I was like, oh, this isn't. It's silly because I should have known because I've watched Game of Thrones, but I was like, oh,
Uh-huh.
this isn't a war where like faceless people are dying, where it's like army versus army. This is a war where
Yeah.
they're both going for the necks. Like, you kill my son, I'm expecting a son in return. That kind of thing. It's yeah,
Hmm.
like it's
Yeah.
a small cast, but people are going to it's going to be trimmed down.
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. Yeah. That
the
is
dance.
it's
I
definitely going to be trimmed down. That's the way you said that makes sense.
Yeah, I sum it up in next season of four words: vengeance, justice, fire, and blood. That's what's coming.
Well said.
Lovely,
Well said.
lovely.
And with that, that's everything from us today, folks. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you very much for coming on this journey with us, and thank you to producer Ebuka and Mani for taking our call and answering our Raven. It was really nice to have you on the podcast here with us. Today's show was produced by him and Bankole and Chindu Heiji. Thank you to Jibs, wherever he is on this planet. And thank you again, all of you, for listening. Please stay tuned to Popcorn for Dinner for everything that's going to be covered in the coming weeks, including season 2 of The White Lotus. And yeah, till next time.
Cute outro music.
Oh,
Sorry.
and shout out to Priscilla and Chizzy.
Oh yeah, shout out to Steven.